Hello, hello. I hope you had your time to have your lunch break. I certainly did. I walk around the floor, and there's so many nice exhibitors and such interesting content. So please make sure you don't miss out and get out, network, and build those connections to keep pushing your boundaries. We're going to come back very, very soon, so stay tuned. Get your seats. For those who are online, also stay with us. Remember to share your stories, your photos at HKFTW22 hashtag. If you wish to send your questions, do it through Slido. And don't miss out in the event app, Hong Kong Fintech Week 22. So I'll see you very soon. We are back. We are coming back in less than a minute, so make sure you're ready. That was short. I told you we're coming back very soon. And there's no other better way to start this second half of day one of Hong Kong Fintech Week 2022 than with the next keynote presentation. I would like to welcome here on stage Mr. Stephen Phillips. He's the Director General of Investment Promotion at Invest Hong Kong. Welcome, Mr. Phillips.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining this session. In the next 10 minutes, what I'm going to try and do is give you a flavour of the depth and breadth of fintech opportunities that we see right here in Hong Kong and through Hong Kong. My name is Stephen Phillips, and I lead a team at Invest Hong Kong, a department of the Hong Kong government that helps both mainland and international companies set up and grow in and via Hong Kong. Fintech is so important that we have got a dedicated fintech team at Invest Hong Kong, and their job is to help you identify opportunities right here and then take them through to success. What I'd like to do really is drill down into a little bit of detail about the opportunities that we see available, and more broadly how, together with other industry stakeholders and industry itself, that we promote the greater adoption of fintech here in Hong Kong. And I'm going to touch on four broad areas. Firstly, adoption of fintech. I'll touch on the important part of fundraising, both from private markets and also sources of government funding. Share a little bit about what we're doing to promote fintech adoption, and then also some of the work that we're doing about fostering expansion. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about how we have got a program to help fintechs that have set up in Hong Kong expand internationally. As we all know, Hong Kong is one of the world's leading international financial centres, and of course on the back of that, a very vibrant fintech centre. But we also know as government and as stakeholders that we need to see our financial services industry continuously upgrading, and the adoption of fintech lies at the very heart of that. And Invest Hong Kong, together with many stakeholders, is looking at the positive adoption of fintech across multiple financial services sectors. We know that funding too is a critical issue for high growth businesses. So I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about what we see in the capital markets here, both debt and equity, and drill into a little bit of detail about the funding schemes that the government makes available to fintechs at every step of the process. And to pick up on our theme overall of pushing boundaries and reaping benefits, we believe passionately that we have got to keep pushing ourselves, keep pushing the ecosystem to innovate. I was very taken by Eddie Yu's comment earlier today about radical open-mindedness. And I think that is what we're trying to do when we're looking at how we really push the boundaries here in Hong Kong to ensure that Hong Kong really is at the leading edge of fintech globally. I'll share 3 areas that I think you will all find exciting. I think all of them have been touched on already today. And the last point I'll cover off really is making it happen. We all want to see success. We all want to see the fruits of our labours. And at Invest Hong Kong, our job is partly to help you achieve that success. So perhaps we can take a quick look at the depth and scale of the market. I'd focus you particularly on the right-hand column of this slide, where it gives you a flavour of how deep actually different financial verticals are in Hong Kong. More than 1,800 asset managers, 160 plus licensed banks, 8 virtual banks, almost 20 million credit cards in circulation, more than 160 insurers, 4 virtual insurers, and 30% of our SMEs are import-export related, so very important from the trade finance and the FX point of view. But if there are 2 takeaways, key takeaways from this slide, I would say it is the number of financial institutions which generates this scale of a B2B opportunity. And then if you look at the asset and wealth management size of the market, the concentration of wealth in Hong Kong is very significant, and that leads to both B2B and B2C wealth tech opportunities. Our regulators, as I'm sure you've heard a lot already, both enable and regulate the market here in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority has a Fintech 2025 strategy, which is about all banks going fintech. And that really is about encouraging, in a very positive way, banks to adopt fintech at the very heart of their business model. And the good news is the tech baseline assessment shows that banks are already a long way down that track. We've heard a little bit already today about CBDC and also consent-based data sharing, and I'll come back to those a little bit later. We also have heard today the policy statement from Hong Kong on how we're going to deal with virtual assets going forward. So this is just another example of where we're creating a policy environment that supports the development of the market. At a practical level, we have a scheme that some of you might find useful. It's a proof of concept subsidy scheme, which helps fintechs secure funding for POCs working with financial institutions. So depending upon the scope and the scale of impact of the POC, you might be able to tap into funding from 150,000 Hong Kong dollars up to a maximum of 400,000 Hong Kong dollars. Let's take a look now at fundraising. Private capital in Hong Kong, we have the second largest pool of private capital in Asia, second only to the mainland. And you can see from this chart that our capital markets, that capital pool, is deeper than every other significant regional centre. And that's important to growth businesses. So access to capital at every stage, angel, VC, PE, and all the way through to listing on our stock exchange is all within the realms of possibility right here in Hong Kong. The government also has a range of funding schemes that you can potentially tap into. At Invest Hong Kong, we pulled them together on this very busy slide. I don't expect you to read it, but if you want to know more, the QR code takes you through to a link to all of the funding schemes. But a range of schemes available at different stages of the development of your business, and a whole range of different schemes for certain functionality of the business. And our job at Invest Hong Kong is to help you navigate which schemes are most appropriate for your own business. I talked a little bit about the need to continuously push the boundaries, to continuously innovate. That phrase that Eddie Yu used, open radical-mindedness, again comes to my mind. We've heard a lot already today about what we're doing in virtual assets, and the policy statement today, I think, is a bold, clear statement that Hong Kong is going to play a leading role in this space. Again, many of the topics on this slide were covered off earlier today, but I think they're worth repeating, particularly Hong Kong's distinct environment in the context of one country, two systems. So the virtual asset environment in Hong Kong is distinct to Hong Kong. The regulatory framework is going to provide the clarity and the certainty that participants in the market need, but also provide, importantly, investor protection. The commercial data interchange, also a really, really exciting development, and obviously that will be the oil that facilitates the growth of many more fintech applications. We can see it already as a potential driver of SME lending, but I'm sure there are going to be more and more use cases as we embed data interchange into the ecosystem. CBDC, also something where lots of good stuff is happening. Together with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, we've been talking to the business sector about the opportunities. And these are just 8 of the areas that businesses have said they would like to see Hong Kong lead the way. As I said at the beginning, our job at Invest Hong Kong is to help make things happen. And we have got a dedicated scheme for fintechs to grow your business here in Hong Kong. It's called Global Fast Track. If you want to know more, if you want to join it, please scan the QR code and have a chat to our team. At the heart of it, it gives you a structured approach and connectivity to 4 key segments. That includes corporate clients, lots of different logos that I'm sure you'll recognize there. To investors, to that private capital pool, the fuel for your growth. To potential service providers and channel partners that will help you speed your growth in the marketplace. And finally, as I mentioned at the outset, we also want you to grow from Hong Kong into other markets. And we have a number of partners that help you do just that at an international scale. So if we can help, we would love to do so. Please get in touch with Invest Hong Kong, either here in Hong Kong or in our 32 locations around the world. Thank you very much indeed, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Well, thank you to Mr. Phillips. As always, very interesting content that he shares with us. And obviously, to all the team at Invest Hong Kong for putting together such great events around the whole year. Well, what's the theme of our event? Pushing boundaries, reaping benefits. That's the title of our next session. And we are facing an evolution in the financial sector. So our next speakers are going to tell us all about the importance of having good governance and regulations. Together with Joseph Chan, the Undersecretary for the Financial Services, Hong Kong SAR, and leaders of Citibank, Hong Kong, and Tencent, our moderator, Enoch Yu, the Chief Reporter Business at SCMP, we will learn all around this topic. So please welcome them on stage.
Okay. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Joseph, Ricky, and Forrest. Thank you for joining us of this very meaningful panel today. And this one, I think, this year, I think the FinTech Week has seen more people to attend in person. So it's a good forum. So maybe the first question we want to talk about is this topic. Topic is about pushing boundary and reaping benefit. So I think maybe for scene setting, I think let the audience know what we are going on now. So maybe Joseph, can you talk about what is the nation's government push to promote FinTech in Hong Kong?
Sure, thank you, Enoch. And again, it's great seeing you all at FinTech Week again. Well, let me start by sharing with you, of course, the latest initiative on virtual assets, because this morning we issued a policy statement on the development of virtual assets in Hong Kong. The statement sets out the government's policy towards developing a vibrant sector and ecosystem for virtual assets here in Hong Kong. It explained in detail our vision and approach, regulatory regimes, thoughts on investor exposures, and also our pilot projects to embrace the technological benefits and financial innovations brought by virtual assets. And the government and our regulators are also exploring a number of pilot projects to test the technological benefits brought by virtual assets and the application in financial markets. So these pilot projects include the NFT issuance for Hong Kong FinTech Week, a green bond tokenization for the government green bond, and also the e-Hong Kong dollar. Well, in general, in Hong Kong, as a leading international financial center in Asia, we are open and inclusive towards the global community of innovators and engaging in virtual asset business. So the government, in conjunction with our regulators, are working towards providing a more facilitating environment for promoting sustainable and responsible development of the virtual asset sectors in Hong Kong. And we will continue to put in place timely and necessary guardrails to mitigate any actual or potential risks in line with international standards so that the virtual asset business here can develop and thrive in a sustainable manner.
Thank you, Joseph. So next, Vicky, you are Senior Executive of Citi. So can you share your view on the, what is the latest development in the banking sector in terms of FinTech?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. We have gone through many different stages, and starting from not having much to having some functionalities, a little bit more to where we are. So it's really a very good question as to what's next then. With evolving customer needs, higher expectation, and advancement in technology, I'm sure the next wave is going to be very exciting. And technology is always behind the scene as a key driver. It tells us what's possible, what are the possibilities out there. And when we talk about technology, one of the things that came to my mind is Web3. We all know that it's going to be blockchain, DeFi, metaverse, etc. And with the advancement of technology, we will think about what we can make use of that. Let me maybe talk about a little bit about blockchain. As a technology, I think it's here to stay. Disregard the development of the other initiative. And then with blockchain, a lot of things at the back will be changing in terms of the operation flow, in terms of settlement, real-time processing. A lot of things are going to change the customer's experience and their expectation as well. So this is one particular aspect. And other than that, metaverse. Metaverse is also another one, again, being possible, suddenly become possible. And for example, in our case, in Citi, we have developed a digital twin in metaverse, in which where you can find our Citi Global Wealth Center in K11. So customer, before going to the physical branch, they can actually go to the metaverse and take a look. Then you'll see the connection between the online and offline is going to be more related, more closely connected. And again, this will give us a lot of interesting possibility so that we can serve the customer better and also educate our customer how to interact, how to engage us. We engage them more closely. And of course, talking about the next wave, I don't think I can leave this topic without mentioning about cybersecurity. Banking industry is one of that being affected or related. This particular one, we are very conscious about that, and then we are also investing in tools, technology, so that we can have preventive and also detective measures. Again, the client education piece is one thing we need to work very closely with the clients jointly, with the regulator as well. So I'll pause here, but at least I see the next phase to be very exciting and also give us a lot of different challenges and opportunities.
That's all very, very good. And then Forrest, you are senior executive for Tencent, a very big technology company. Can you share your what is the next big thing in your sector?
Yeah, sure. First, thank you for having me here. It's so great to see, after the few years in COVID, Hong Kong has such a major event again with so many participants. Seems like the old time is coming back. So in our businesses, one thing that we have noticed recently is the proliferation of a cross-border B2C e-commerce. There's a report sent by NDRC yesterday, and the transaction volume just overpassed about 2 trillion RMB per year for cross-border B2C, including import and export. And we believe there's a very strong demand and business opportunity within that, because over the last a decade, Tencent has been working very hard to build a payment infrastructure in China, in mainland, basically to have the frictionless and the low-cost payment experience. China merchants can enjoy lower than 0.6% transaction cost for their payment. We believe the cross-border merchants ought to be able to enjoy similar low cost and experience. And we see there are very strong demand and to develop products and services to tailor toward that demand.
Well, now we have a government official joining our panel. So Vicky and Forrest, can each of you give some wish list to what you want the Hong Kong government do to how you're set doing better in your fintech development? So maybe ladies first. Vicky, can you talk about your wish list first?
Okay, it's a golden opportunity for us, Forrest and I, to talk to government officials. I think that before I share with you my wish list, one of the things I have to say is the government and also a lot of bodies have are very committed and also made a lot of effort in driving the digital agenda. So we recognize that and then we see that, very appreciative of that. If we may have a wish list, I think I will start with data. So data is very important in how to serve the clients and how to run the business more efficiently. I use the KYC database as one example. If we can have a common centralized customer KYC database, the customer experience would be better in terms of the onboarding. Also for us practitioners, players in the industry, we can also make the sales process or the engagement process more efficient. So this is one. And along with that, also about data is, for example, another piece we can think about centralized is the fraud database. If we can have a fraud database, we can join hands and combat against the cyber criminals together. Again, it will save costs, it will make ourselves more efficient. So I would say these two as example about data. The other one, again, I'm a little bit greedy, but allow me to have one more wish list before I pass on to Forex. I would like to see the fast tracking of the open banking phase 3, because it's is around the corner, it's coming, and again, it's in the agenda of the regulator. It's about sharing as well. The whole concept, similar to the database thing, is about sharing of information. How can we have common definition where the banks, upon the customer consent, we can share information? Again, it's for the better good of the industry. It will help us enhance the client experience, and it will just make our banking industry more efficient. We see good example outside Hong Kong as well. I think this is one of the things, it's on the agenda. I want to see it happen faster and then hopefully yielding better results. So I will give the other chance to Forrest.
Okay, so Forrest, what's your wish list?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I first, before my wish list, I really want to echo Vicky's point on data, especially on the KYC side. Because we see if there's a government-sponsored infrastructure that can help every industry player, especially now if you want to do KYC, we need our users to shoot, to video their ID card from different angles, try to use technology to decipher whether this ID card is authentic or not. That's actually a very hard experience for the user. However, if there's a common database that we can very easily to verify at a particular individual whether he is authentic or not, that would greatly help the online experience for all the individuals. So I very much want to echo that point. So on my own wish list, also on behalf of probably the industry, I see government is already moving towards that direction. For example, stronger interconnection with mainland capital markets, through the Stock Connect, through the Online Wealth Management Connect, etc. I see that's great, and I just hope that speed and that expansion can be even more stronger and forceful, because the way that I see it is Hong Kong has such unique position as a hub for asset management and wealth management, and China investors are becomes richer and richer, and the global asset allocation is becoming a strong demand for them. So how can we enable that process to be even more proliferating, regardless whether it's through RMB denominated investment tool or through the mutual market access? So I really like the recent chief executive's policy address. I think that's exactly on the direction. But I hope maybe for initiatives like cross-border wealth management connect, if they can open to more different types of financial institutions, not just the banks, for example, mutual fund distribution companies, brokerage firms, or online wealth management platforms. I think if we can elicit and attract a lot of different players in this market, we will make it bigger. And especially, I think it's a really fundamental. It's really important for Hong Kong, because as a capital markets, it's really a two-sided network effect. If you have more investors, you have more assets, the market will be more proliferating. So that's really one of our wish list. The other one probably has something to do with the service that we're providing in Hong Kong here, which is WeChat Pay Hong Kong. It is a mobile payment tool, and it's growing very well. We have more than 1 million users and more than 150,000 merchants. But we just hope the interoperability with a mainland payment network can be even more seamless. We hope our mobile payment users in Hong Kong, they can enjoy same services from all the mainland merchants, regardless of whether it's JD or Meituan. If they can pay directly, if they can have a small amount transfer with mainland their friends and families in mainland, through the payment network, in a very seamless way, that will be great. I think from the interoperability side, if we can, further reduce the barrier and further enhance the interoperability among the various payment networks, I believe that will also benefit greatly to the local users.
So Joseph, how will you respond to the wish list?
Thank you. Well, I think your original question is about what's the most important to provide good environment. And I have to say the most important from a government perspective is always to listen, get our eyes and ears open to understand industry needs. So, well, we usually do it in meetings and different forums, and apparently also on the public panel on the FinTech Week is a great occasion as well. Well, in general, of course, from the government perspective, we understand that we need to apply a multi-pronged approach to promote FinTech. So be that regulations, infrastructure, connectivity with other markets and jurisdictions, and also nurturing talents, and also the regulations to be updated, so on and so forth. And specific to what Vicky and Forrest mentioned, maybe I'll pick a few points. First, about the new products and services. Well, for sure, we want to encourage the industry to promote, to develop more new products and services through FinTech. And we also understanding funding is essential. Support from the government is also very important. So that's why we have already launched 2 rounds of FinTech proof of concept subsidy schemes over the past 2 years. So where we provide subsidies to financial institutions for partnering with FinTech companies. We provide subsidies to FinTech companies to partner with financial institutions to conduct proof of concept on new ideas. And a new round of the scheme is underway at the moment, and we have actually expanded the range can be eligible under the scheme. So we hope that can help promote more FinTech innovations. Vicky mentioned about data, which is crucial to the financial sector, of course. And as she's mentioned, actually, Hong Kong MA, the FinTech 2025 strategy already outlines different initiatives. One of those is a commercial data interchange, CDI, which officially was launched just last week. So this landmark data infrastructure project in Hong Kong facilitates enterprises to share their data with banks through a central platform, thereby enabling the trade to access more convenient finance services. And we understand it's just the beginning. We won't stop here, because in terms of a centralized platform, in terms of promoting database to improve customer experience and KYC, there could a lot more that we can do. But we have a good start on CDI, and definitely we'll keep pushing further. I think in terms of the banking industry, the other initiative, of course, it's the implementation of the Open API to provide more innovative financial services and customer experience. I hear what Vicky and Forrest said. I was from the banking sector before, so back then we always had saying, when should this be done? It should have been done yesterday. As a government, definitely will work full force to achieve those objectives as soon as possible. I know I'm eating up a lot of time. The last thing I would like to also say about the importance of providing an environment for FinTech development is that legal and regulatory framework and regime is very important. As FinTech develops new innovation, new products and solutions, certain traditional functions or products will be displaced. There will be new ideas and something new customer experience to be provided. So updating our regulatory environment is very important. So as I said at the earlier question, we have just launched a policy statement, right, on virtual assets. And also, if you look at our track record, we were among the first in Asia to launch virtual bank license, licensing for virtual insurers, so on and so forth. So definitely, we will continue to be staying ahead of the game in terms of providing a more conducive regulatory environment for the business to develop on a sustainable manner.
So I think this session is talking about opportunities, and many of us will know that the great opportunity is in the Greater Bay Area. Tencent is basically headquartered in Shenzhen. That is also just our neighbor. So can each of you share your view? What do you think the opportunity can give us from the Greater Bay Area? So maybe Forrest, you start, because you're from Shenzhen, right?
Sure. Yeah. I'm really passionate about the opportunities in GBA. Okay, so with a 86 million population and about 1.6 trillion US dollar or about 10 trillion RMB GDP, this is a really great area to have any kind of a business business opportunity to tap into. Especially we feel the regulators and the governments, from the GBA area, regardless whether it's mainland regulators or Hong Kong or Macau, they are actually working very closely to create a very cohesive environment for the business to be able to tap into different opportunities. Specifically, I would still like to mention this Wealth Management Connect opportunity, because I think the design actually is very elegant. It's a RMB closed-looped design. It allowed the China investor to tap into the overseas assets and enjoy the benefit, but also it's a closed-loop system, so reduce the risk from the foreign exchange standpoint. It's just currently I feel a lot of the user experience side, especially related to open account, or KYC, etc., is still suboptimal. But we hope that we can work together with the regulators on both sides, with our partners in the banking industry, to really use technology to streamline the experience while maintain or even enhance the risk management and the risk control. I think we are able to do that because through our over a decade of servicing the payment users in mainland, we have developed a very strong technology on identify potential risks on the fraud side, on the AML side, etc. So we are very willing to use our technology to help enhance and expansion of that kind of business.
So Vicky, what's your view?
Before talking about the GBA opportunities, I want to follow up on what the point Forrest mentioned about Wealth Connect. I'm a strong advocate of the Wealth Connect. It just gives us huge opportunity to go beyond the 7 million population we have in Hong Kong. In the proximity, you see a bigger population, bigger opportunity. So I'm a strong advocate behind it. Since the launch, we had experienced a lot. At least in our case, in City, we partner with Guangfa Bank. Since the launch, the operation has been very smooth. The infrastructure is there. We always say, but if we can have a little bit more opening up of the scheme, more enhancement in the process, the client experience and the whole scheme probably can have even more to contribute to the development of the GBA whole area. I think Forrest mentioned a bit of that, and then if I'm to add on in terms of the product range, the investment amount, the remote opening of accounts, and the servicing as well, instead of doing just the execution piece of it. I think all these can contribute to make the Wealth Connect even more exciting and encouraging to a lot of the customers. So other than the Wealth Connect, another point I want to make is about the synergy we can drive between the cities within the GBA area. Hong Kong, we are international. We have a very special place within the GBA. We have the very well-developed financial system and also legal system. Our people have the experience. We have the international mindset as well. Whereas different cities have their different roles to play and different strengths. For example, Shenzhen, so advanced in technology and innovation. We have our Guangzhou, which is very specialized and experienced in operation as well. Each city, you will see that we have a role to play to make the GBA a better and a bigger one. So I do feel that we have opportunities ahead, and together with technology advancement, I'm sure we can do better in this area.
So Joseph, how do you think GBA can provide big opportunity for Hong Kong startup and companies?
And our wish list as well.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, two things. First, in general, right? As Vicky pointed out very clearly, Hong Kong, on one hand, we are the leading international financial center in Asia and also China's international financial center. On the other hand, we have the preferential access to mainland markets, so it's an ideal location for fintech companies to target the Greater Bay Area's potential and business opportunities? Well, flowing back to the key item on the wish list per se about Wealth Management Connect. Well, first of all, we understand that Wealth Management Connect launched like over a year or so, and we have get a lot of feedback. And what we are working towards is in terms of product range, in terms of the customer experience, in terms of the participation of variety of financial institutions, and also in terms of the quota, we have received a wide range of feedback, and we're working towards to modify the scheme. And if you look at the history of different Connect schemes, be that Stock Connect, Bond Connect or so, you will see that usually we launch it first to make sure it operates smoothly, as Vicky mentioned, on a steady manner, and then we collect more feedback and we'll continue to upgrade it or continue to modify it with a wider product range or with more participation with a deeper quota as well. So definitely we are working towards that. In general, I also want to say that definitely the Wealth Management Connect is a prime example, right, of how Hong Kong can help international businesses to target the mainland opportunities. The other thing that we're working on, for example, is the after-sales service of for insurance products, right? We are working with the mainland regulators to allow the opening of after-sales service in the mainland cities within Greater Bay Area so that they can serve the insurance products offered by Hong Kong in terms of claims, in terms of inquiries, in terms of renewal, so on and so forth. And in general, in taking a step back from the specific scheme, I want to highlight that while we know there are opportunities, the government understands that we have a role to play to facilitate the further penetration into Greater Bay Area for fintech companies. So, for example, we are providing fintech companies a one-stop platform at the moment for them to conduct pilot trials for cross-boundary fintech initiatives concurrently in both locations, which will help expedite the product launch and also help reduce the costs. Also, we are offering comprehensive assistance for fintech companies stationed in Hong Kong to expand the business in the mainland, including providing information of the policy, regulatory information, assisting them to promote their business with potential clients, and also providing cross-boundary data applications, office leasing, so on and so forth. And the other one I would like to highlight is that, as announced in the policy address by the Chief Executive earlier this month, we are also devising now an online platform to connect fintech companies in Hong Kong to the users, partners, and investors in markets within Hong Kong and the mainland, and also beyond mainland in Asia, like Southeast Asia, Asia or so. And we have scheduled that platform to be launched later this year. So definitely, we understand the opportunities there. We understand our role to help facilitate cross-boundary fintech development, and we're very committed to doing so with the fintech community together.
Well, we definitely see a lot of opportunity in the Greater Bay Area, but unfortunately, the pandemic has meant now the border with the between Hong Kong and the mainland city has not yet reopened. So, how do you think about this pandemic? Has it slowed down your fintech development, or is the other way around? Because we know the social distancing actually encourage more people to do online banking, maybe playing more online game. So maybe Vicky, can you share your view with us?
The pandemic definitely has reshaped the whole world and also changed our behavior very drastically, including the way customers engage us, we engage them, the way we live, we work, and we bank, all have been very different from before, and but in a very positive way. Can you imagine how much money, cost, time we have spent in old days to educate customers using our digital platform and using digital capabilities? But because of pandemic, basically, customers suddenly become very eager to find out how they can do transactions remotely and how they can have different ways of banking. So this is very encouraging. It's a positive side effect of the pandemic. And if we look at our portfolio, for example, right now, over 85% of our customers, they're digital active. And then it's not just about viewing transactions or checking out things. It's doing transactions. Close to 80% of them, they are financial active. So, you know, you can imagine how many customers are suddenly becoming digital savvy, and then they are willing to use these transactions on the mobile and on online. In fact, if you look at mobile payment, you mentioned about payment before, a lot of customers change their payment method to mobile. And the mobile transactions, again, increased hugely in our portfolio as well. So all these, one important thing is this behavior is not switching back. They are going to stay there. And then it's us now, the ball is on our court as regards how we can enhance the behavior, how it can further improve the experience so that they can stay on and then enjoy that digital experience on our platform. And I really look forward to having even more possibility and also more engagement with the customers digitally.
So, Forrest, what's your view?
Yeah, I live in Hong Kong, so just my personal experience over the last couple of years, my usage of Hong Kong TV Mall, Deliveroo, Foodpanda has grown exponentially, right?
I hope you're using our co-brand card.
Yeah, hopefully you are using WeChat Pay Hong Kong as well. Yeah, so I think that's just natural, right? Because once you start using those online services, you feel it's so convenient and it's so good. You don't need to wait in the line. You just sit at home and then the products will be delivered, etc. It's just natural, you know, people. I think that it actually, from online commerce perspective, COVID actually helped the acceleration of that. I think from fintech industry player perspective, that gives us more responsibility to really manage our services well, because more people will do their transactions online, more people will open accounts online. So really, you really need to have a better solution to manage the KYC, manage the online fraud, manage the AML issues, etc. Right? So we feel on one side, we feel, you know, the demand is growing very fast. On the other hand, how can we accelerating the development of our technology in order to service such a explosive of demand and still maintain or even make the user experience better? I think that's sort of our both opportunity and responsibility. And we very dearly feel that, you know, as long as we keep identify the critical issues and we keep have a focus from technology to solve those issues, you know, the world is becoming better and better.
So finally, I would like each of you to share your view, because we are now closing to the end of 2022, 2023 is just next, in the near future, okay? So what do you think is the major opportunity and challenge next year? And maybe for a longer term horizon, what do you think is the major catalyst can help Hong Kong's fintech to develop further?
Yeah.
So maybe Joseph, can you share your view first?
Okay, sure, thank you. I think one major challenge to us in Hong Kong on fintech, but also globally, is of course talents. Because after all, if you look at the last few years, fintech globally has developed very quickly. So if one wants to say, hey, I'm looking for someone in fintech with 5-10 years experience, if you look back the scale and the size of the market 5-10 years ago, it was much smaller. So it's difficult to look for people with enough experience in that angle. So definitely it's a challenge to everybody. Hong Kong is not alone. Well, on that, of course, locally, we have offered a lot of different training to groom our local talents. At the moment, multiple universities in Hong Kong are offering fintech programs on the bachelor level or master level to groom our students. For the existing financial practitioners in the traditional financial industry, we have also rolled out the financial practitioners fintech training program to help offer training. And apart from nurturing the local talents, of course, it's important to attract the talents from other places, locations, from mainland and overseas as well. Fintech is actually on our talent list at the moment, meaning that Fintech talent coming to Hong Kong, they would enjoy facilitation for immigration under immigration policy. And also, as I mentioned by Chief Executive announced in the policy address, we have also launched the Top Talent Pass Scheme. So the top talents either graduated from the top 100 universities globally, or those who have been making 2.5 million Hong Kong dollars equivalent of annual salary or so can come to Hong Kong without a job offer, get a visa to stay here as well. So you can see that definitely talent is a key challenge and we're trying to address it. I know time is of essence. One thing about opportunity that I like to mention is ESG. Definitely ESG is here to stay, it's getting bigger and bigger because it's important. We mobilize private capital to combat climate change and everybody is on board. But how to combine FinTech and ESG to further improve the efficiency of mobilizing private capital to combat climate change. I think it's a common goal. It can be done. Will be a big opportunity to Hong Kong, and that's why the tokenization of the government green bond is also one step we want to showcase to the market that we are definitely taking these opportunities very seriously. Thank you.
So, Vicky, can you share what do you think is the major challenge and opportunity next year?
I don't want to repeat what Joseph, you mentioned about talent. Definitely this is on the top of the list. How can we get more talent? How can we get talents of technology background, technology expertise, and also an entrepreneurial mindset so that we can push ourselves forward. So I'm not going to touch on the talent. The challenge and opportunities both lie in how can we simplify and streamline our process. Here we are at FinTech Week. We are talking about using technology. We are not using technology to add more control and make the process even more complicated. We are using technology to simplify the process, making the life of our customers easier, making the life of petitioners easier. So I see this as one of the opportunities, especially we are open-minded people in Hong Kong, and then we always look upon others to see, hey, where's the best practices we can learn from other markets, from within China, from outside China, where can we bring the best of everywhere and then set up a framework, policies that can make the banking industry and also the entire Hong Kong development faster and more efficient. I see that streamlining and the simplification being the opportunities for us.
So for us, last but not the least, what's your view for the major opportunity and challenge in 2023?
Yeah, I see a short one and a long-term one. A short-term one is still related to wealth management or investment. Because today, the interest, the risk-free interest, in Hong Kong is almost, double where it was before, right? It is anywhere between 4% to 5%. So for any Wealth Connect investors, given it's tailored towards the low and medium risk investors, this is a great opportunity for them to participate. And also the Stock Connect, if the RMB denominated stock investment tool is become more mature, it is a great way for mainland investors to tap into the Hong Kong stocks, given the valuation is at such an attractive level. So I think that's a short-term catalyst. I think over the long term, I agree with what Joseph and Vicky mentioned. It's really about the talent. I really welcome the recent, policies on lifting the quota and the attracting the top talents to Hong Kong. I think that's really over the long term, that's the fundamental to Hong Kong, and that will make this industry go to the next level.
Well, I think the policy address already got a lot of measures to attract talents. Yeah. And so I think thank you very much for joining our program today, and it's a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another great shot for remembering And don't forget yourselves to share with our hashtag HKFTW22. If you happen to take a great shot like this one, please share it on our social medias. Well, this was such an interesting panel, and as you know, we have more interesting content throughout the day and tomorrow. For those online, stay tuned because all of the content is on demand at our events app. Well, coming up next, we have our journey to a retail CBDC. Our next speakers, we have leaders from HKMA and Bank of Israel discussing with our moderator, Daniel Aiden, advisor of BIS International Innovation Hub Center in Hong Kong from the Bank of International Settlements. He will be discussing how can you get there to the retail CBDCs. Please welcome them.
No, far later. Hello, everybody. Hello. It's nice to see so many people in person. It's nice to be back at Hong Kong Fintech Week. So, for those of you who have been listening since the morning, I'm sure you've heard CBDC being mentioned a couple of times over and over. So, over 100 central banks are at different phases of investigating central bank digital currencies. And needless to say, I think if it isn't obvious by now, central bank digital currencies have the potential of transforming the financial ecosystem. Central bank digital currency in general can be distinguished broadly between retail and wholesale systems. Today we're going to talk about retail systems. Wholesale systems are largely made for interbank payments, whereas retail CBDC systems are made for people like you and I, doing everyday transactions. With me today, I have two strategic leaders and thinkers, but most importantly, doers in this space. Mr. Yoav Sofer, CBDC lead at the Central Bank of Israel, and Nelson Chow, Chief Fintech Facilitation Officer at the HKMA. Let's welcome them again with another warm round of applause, please. Great. Thank you guys for being here very much. I think we should probably open this and predicate it on the fact that neither the Bank of Israel nor the HKMA have decided to launch a retail CBDC for now, but we'll hear a little bit today about the work that you've been doing to prepare for this potential outcome. So maybe you have, as our visitor, maybe we can start with you and you can tell us a little bit about the domestic context in Israel and the motivation and the case for retail CBDC.
Sure, happy to. Let me first just say really I want to thank both the HKMA and the BIS Innovation Hub for inviting me to this amazing event, and really happy to be here. So, you know, Israel, I guess like Hong Kong and many other countries, has a pretty well-developed payment system. And indeed, the question of do we need and why do we need the CBDC is not a straightforward one. First of all, you want to think of the fact that as the technology is evolving, central bank money is actually losing its technological advancement as opposed to commercial bank money. There are less and less things that we are able to do these days with cash as our economy moves to become more and more digital. Therefore, all central banks need to kind of ask themselves, do we need to also take our kind of basic product, which is cash, and move it towards the digital era, sort of, meaning supplying it to the public digitally. Within that, we at the Bank of Israel have mapped actually 6 possible motivations for why we may want to issue digital currency in the future. I'll name them briefly and maybe describe them along the conversation. So the 6 are, first of all, competition, innovation, resilience of the payment system, cross-border payments, privacy, maintaining the ability to pay with privacy, and reduce the use of cash and fight the illicit economy. Actually, we have done a set of technological experiments and POCs at the work that we've been doing at the Bank of Israel, and they have covered most of them. So, for example, in our initial POC that we did, actually, it was back last year, we set up an Ethereum kind of test environment where we launched CBDC tokens and kind of played with them, learned the technology. We kind of tried to test what it actually means to issue, mint, and pay with a token. And we also created a system where we could actually kind of bring the potential of DVP payments pretty much to every household. So you could think of a situation, for example, where you have a digital, any asset that can be represented digitally. For example, like the ownership of a car. And you can do a smart contract so that if you're selling me your used car and I'm paying you with digital money, so we can create a smart contract that the money will only move to you once the ownership of the car moves to myself. So we kind of played with this and learned of some policy consequences from this technology. Another thing that we did within the first stage of our POC is that we looked into privacy. You know, if you think about it, these days we have two very distinct alternatives. We have cash, which is completely anonymous, right? If I will go and buy something at the shop, no one knows who bought, what did they buy, for how much did they buy, and etc. Not even the other side of the transaction, they don't even know who I am. As opposed to that, we have commercial bank money, which is something where, you know, if I buy with my credit card company and my bank they know everything about my transaction. In CBDC, we actually have the opportunity to maybe rethink this and maybe design this something in a different manner. So we actually tested the technology that allows the policymaker to create kind of a periodical budget for private digital money. So each jurisdiction could decide, for example, that maybe we want to allow our citizens to pay in a specific month up to $100 or $200 that you can make digital, completely anonymous transactions, and then transactions are technologically completely anonymous. So we also played with this, and what we are seeing that through testing the technology, we're also thinking of all sorts of policy questions. I can talk down about them a bit more as we proceed with the conversation.
Okay, great, thank you. Maybe Nelson, same question to you. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the context for retail CBDC in Hong Kong, another economy that has a very advanced payment system. So maybe you can motivate the topic and give a little bit of a background on the work that you guys have been doing.
Sure. I think if you look at around the world, most of the central banks have researched in CBDC in both the wholesale and retail level. And actually, if you look at the BIS survey, most of the central banks actually look into retail. I think there are a lot of reasons. I think Cecilia this morning have mentioned about the central bank's unique role and the trust that it can bring into the system. So that's why in Hong Kong, we also look into the retail space, despite the more advanced payment system that is already here. I recently just changed my phone, and I realized that I have so many different payment apps, and I can find at least 9 of them. I believe there are actually more of them. There are NFC based and also QR code based. So I believe you can, it's a highly competitive market. And someone may ask why we still need to study our CBDC. I believe the reason some of them you have already mentioned. I think as a central bank, we have to support not just increase the competition within the market. This competition will drive innovation. That's almost true for every market. But also, I think we need to play our role as a central bank. In the old days, cash has been introduced, right, for the reason of ensuring the transfer of value in a trusted manner and in the physical world. But now we know that the world is moving more from physical to virtual. And our role is the same. I think in the virtual world, we also need to play our role to ensure trust within the systems, to ensure transfer of value in a safe and secure manner. And we also want to drive innovation. I think in the morning you heard of a lot of the talk about the metaverse, the Web3, NFT, all of that, DeFi. I guess this is the reason why even in Hong Kong we have a relatively vibrant payment system. We still want to move into studying our CBDC.
Okay, great, thank you. So maybe Nelson, this one's for you. So the Bank for International Settlement Innovation Hub in Hong Kong just published a project report called Project Aurum, which was of course based on the e-Hong Kong dollar and the technical implementation. So there were 2 models that were compared there. It's a 2-tier retail CBDC model. And in one of the 2-tier models, it was a CBDC that was intermediated by the banks. And then the second model, it was a stable coin that was issued that was backed by a wholesale CBDC. It's actually a very unique context for Hong Kong with note issuing banks. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that project and what some of the learnings were from that.
Yeah, sure. I think we have started to study CBDC since 2017, our project Lion Rock. But at that time, we focused more on the wholesale space. So at that time, we worked with the 3 note issuing banks, plus the clearinghouse in Hong Kong. And afterwards, we also, after certain level of maturity, we believe that we have the resources to move in the retail space. And at that time, we also follow very closely the BIS publications about the 3 models of retail CBDCs. And at that time, a number of pain points, or actually requirements for issuing CBDC, our CBDCs have been listed. And to achieve all of them is not easy, right? You mentioned about anonymity, and some also mentioned about anonymous but traceable to a certain extent to avoid money laundering, and other issues like privacy and security, because when it goes to the retail wallet, you must ensure that the value of the holder of the wallets will not be attacked or stolen from the criminals. So at that time, we have a colleague who is an expert in cryptography, who think about, can we use our existing Hong Kong model? Hong Kong is very different. We have the note issuing banks issuing notes. And at the same time, we have the government issued coins and notes. So we have actually 2 systems. We want to mirror that in the digital world, and that's why we have this Project Aurum. And of course, we have just published the paper, and you guys can take a look at the Project Aurum paper. You can also refer to the earlier on paper announced in October last year, which is the EHKD technical perspective paper. I think both of them will give pretty much good insights about our thinking of how our CBDC can be launched in a 2-tier model. And also, this project, we put it under the BIS umbrella, so the source code is open to BIS members.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Okay, you hear that, BIS members? Wonderful. Thank you. So that's Project Aurum, and Yoav, maybe we can move on and we can talk a little bit about Project Sela. In many ways, Project Sela is an extension and builds on some of the learnings from Aurum. So Project Sela is a joint project between the Bank of Israel and the HKMA, and it works on the same concept of a 2-tier intermediated model, but introduces this notion of exposureless intermediation, and it also introduces a strong aspect of cybersecurity. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the motivations there, the visions for the project, and kind of what the goal of Project Sela looks like.
Sure. Daniel, you actually mentioned the 2 kind of building stones of Project Sela, but you actually forgot the most important one, which is, to me, really the collaboration. Just when we started the current phase of our CBDC project, it was clear to us that we need to learn from the experience of others and join forces with others. And I think the Bank of Israel couldn't have had a better partner than the HKMA under the umbrella of the BIS Innovation Hub to do some more explorations regarding our CBDC work. So once again, Nelson, thank you and all of your colleagues for this really great collaboration. So I was mentioning actually 2 other motivations that we have in Israel for our CBDC, which are competition and resilience. So if you think about competition in the financial and the payment sector, one of the the boundaries to competition is entrance barriers, right? It is hard to get into the financial system because there are all sorts of requirements that we regulators impose on the participants in the financial and the payment system. Now, Project Sela is actually looking at a somewhat kind of renewed concept where if you think about cash, that it is like disintermediated, right? If I want to pay you with cash, there is no one intermediating within the transaction. So we're trying to sort of imitate that into the digital phase where although the CBDC would be 2-tier, so I would not have direct access to the central bank. I the end user, would be accessing the CBDC via an intermediary. But maybe that intermediary cannot be a financial institution, but just be merely a technical provider. So you can think about the CBDC as a system that resides within the central bank, and the network is within the central bank. But I, the end user, need to onboard technical infrastructure that will actually allow me to make use of that CBDC. And that if that institution can be completely exposureless, meaning not touching the money at any point of the transaction or the minting or redemption of the CBDC, then maybe the regulatory requirements for that institution could be looser than those that we put these days on financial institutions, and therefore we could actually achieve more competition. And that actually raises the point of security, because if you're opening the space to more participants, you may be actually compromising security. And I think at that point it kind of raised the idea of maybe we could also look at cybersecurity, which is, I think, something that we in Israel are known for having somewhat expertise, and I for myself have none, but also in the Bank of Israel and in the technological sector in Israel, there's a lot of expertise regarding cybersecurity. So in Project Stellar, we'll be actually looking at kind of these two contradicting elements. How can we actually increase the participants and let more institutions provide the CBDC service while not compromising the cybersecurity, and what kind of cybersecurity checks can we put into the system in order to ensure its resilience?
Right. Very nice. So it's interesting, I guess, we have a two-tier retail model. In that two-tier retail model from Project Orem, we have intermediated CBDC going from the central bank to the commercial banks to the end users. We have a stablecoin-backed CBDC as well. Then comes in Project Sela, and we have exposureless second tier with an added layer of cybersecurity that, again, is kind of like a horizontal that cuts across all payment systems. So those learnings are going to be adaptable to many, many other projects. So we have a couple of,
Yeah, it took a while before I, truly understand the exposureless model. And I think the great thing about the collaboration with the Bank of Israel is I think we all know that you guys are very strong in cybersecurity. And I think that's the reason why we want a cyber-secured two-tier model, not just the wholesale level, but also the retail level.
You know, Nelson, we're so good in cybersecurity that all the emails you're sending me are being blocked by my system, the firewall. Because that good that we are.
Because of the keywords?
I don't know why.
So since this amount of experimentation, I think since then the HKMA has done a public consultation and has also done a policy paper, right? So, we're moving away from kind of technical feasibility and starting to understand maybe the contours of how something like this can roll out. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, how was that public consultation accepted? What are some of the results? And what are some of the policy considerations that, in a way, have been motivated by a lot of this technical work?
Yeah, the HKMA took it very seriously because it's talking about Hong Kong dollar, Hong Kong dollar. So that's why we have published at least 3 papers. One is the technical paper last October. A recent one is earlier this year, and a more recent one is on the 20th of September. We published our policy stance. That policy paper, we summarized the feedbacks that we have received from the industry. And actually, to a little bit of my surprise, the feedback was overall very positive for us to introduce our CBDC. And I think I mentioned about the highly competitive market within Hong Kong. And I think the reason for introducing CBDC or getting ourselves ready is an important element. Because it will take a couple of years before we can really truly implement it. First, the technical things that you have mentioned, we have make sure that it's safe and sound, it's robust, and it's resilient. Another aspect is actually legal. We have to go through possible legislative change to ensure that this Hong Kong dollar is fit for purpose. And just about, last year, I think you may have watched the Tokyo Olympics. Hong Kong have the best results ever. We have 6 medals, and I think that inspired me that, not just because there's one silver medalist is one of our colleagues' daughter. The more importantly is the interviews of them is how long they took to train to such a level that they can go to the Olympic finalists. I think for EHKD or for any CBDC, it's actually the same. You cannot just jump in and say, oh, tomorrow I issue a CBDC. It's no such thing. You have to get yourself ready and prepared, and you have to go through many cycles of testing, iterations of getting pilots. So that's why we have launched in the recent policy paper, we have 3 whales. The first whale is to figure out the legal and technical foundations. We have to lay that foundation. And the second whale, we have to go through iterations of pilots, so to ensure that there are sufficient use cases for us to justify the issuance of EHKD. And the third whale is actual implementations. We hope that whale 1 and 2 will equip us with sufficient maturity to go into whale 3 relatively quickly.
Nice. We'll come back to that rail 3 in a little bit. Thank you. So Yoav, maybe over to you. So I think one of the projects that actually the Bank of Israel is working on that was recently announced is a project called Icebreaker, and it's also a joint project, this time with Sweden's Riksbank and with Norway's Nordsbank, 2 Nordic banks focusing on retail cross-border central bank digital currency. Can you maybe motivate that project a little bit? And maybe, so taking it out of the domestic context now, talking about use cases, this cross-border use case seems to be something that you're interested in.
So first of all, this is indeed one of our major motivations for looking into CBDC, making cross-border transactions cheaper, more efficient, and more customer-friendly. We can also look at this also from the point of view of disintermediation. We were talking about disintermediation earlier in the context of Project Sela, but think about it this way. Let's assume I invite Nelson to come visit us in Israel as a return to my return.
That's a formal invitation.
That's a formal invitation, by the way. So Nelson may want to book his hotel, and he could use his credit card, and the transaction from his credit card to the hotel in Israel will probably go through at least 4 or 5 financial institutions, his credit card issuer, the hotel's merchant acquirer, and maybe at least 2 correspondents in the middle. However, I can actually tell Nelson, listen, when you're coming to Israel, I may actually have some Hong Kong dollars left in my pocket, and you come to Israel, we could exchange them, I'll give you shekels, you take my Hong Kong dollars, and etc. So this is actually something of a concept that we'll be looking into in Project Icebreaker. So in digital payments, it can never be completely disintermediated, because if I hold my CBDC and a store in Sweden holds their CBDC, so there would need to be an institution in the middle that would actually do the foreign exchange transaction. But what we're trying to do in Project Icebreaker is to create a retail, cross-border, immediate, and atomic transaction. So I would be, for example, paying with my digital shekels from my laptop in Israel, and IKEA in Sweden or whoever will be receiving their e-kronas at the other side of the transaction immediately in an atomic or nearly atomic, but a complete final transaction. We believe that that could really reduce the costs and the complexity of cross-border transactions for the end user, and mainly for, as we said, for at least initially, for retail purposes, like as I mentioned, for such as e-commerce and tourism. But maybe at the end of the day, as all of us are looking into innovations that CBDC could bring in the domestic landscape, such as we mentioned, DVP and metaverse and maybe micropayments and privacy payments and stuff like that. So imagine how cool it could actually be if I could do a DVP transaction with a counterparty in another transaction where I'm paying CBDC on the one hand and they're getting their CBDCs on the other hand, and the digital asset is moving maybe on the same platform or something like that. So we could actually combine the cross-border element with the innovation element of CBDCs. So this is what we're looking into in Icebreaker, and once again, a very important collaboration with the 2 central banks that have been in the field for a very long time, and also something very fascinating that we're doing. And we'll see, maybe other central banks may join this in the future.
Yeah, we are an observing member of Icebreaker, and hopefully sometimes later we can be a full member. And at that time, next time you come to Hong Kong, the next FinTech week, you can pay using your payment app.
That's a good goal. There's not a lot of ICE in Hong Kong, but nevertheless, you can be a member of Icebreaker.
We may need to find a new name for that, right?
So when you think about retail payments in Hong Kong, do you see a cross-border angle to that as well? Do you think that that's something that...
Well, I think it depends on how much activities between the jurisdictions. Of course, well, we have a lot of Japanese travelers. Maybe they would like to see something like that, payment methods that they can use cross-border. But I think it's driven by activities, real economic activities. Yeah.
Right, real e-commerce and travel.
Although one thing that's nice about Project Icebreaker is that the way it's built is that there will be a hub in the middle of the CBDC systems, and then if that hub is global, so any CBDC system in the world could potentially connect to it, and then I would be able to transact with an institution in Hong Kong, regardless of the total trade volumes that there are between Israel and Hong Kong, because we're all just connected into the same hub. You can think about it in the way, like, look about, for example, about the telephone system. I can make a direct call from Israel to Hong Kong, not because someone had stretched a line from Israel to Hong Kong, because it's a global system that somehow is being constructed, that we're all working on the same platform, under the same kind of standards, and I don't even need to know anything about the person I'm dialing in the other country except for their number. So if we can import that into CBDCs, so that I don't need to know anything about, think about how we're doing cross-border transactions today, all of these details that we have to put into the bank account and the IBAN number and all these things and the SWIFT code, and how many mistakes we can do in that. Imagine a situation where all I need to know is the phone number of the store that I want to pay in the other country, and I can pay with my CBDC, and they can get their CBDC in the other end of the transaction, and all of the systems connected to this global hub that actually makes sure that the standards are compatible from the CBDC system to the hub, and therefore to the other country's system.
Interesting. So if I took a step back and kind of reflected on the conversation, I think it's interesting. First of all, it's incredible to see the collaboration among central banks. And to see that really, we're doing this all together to a large extent. It's also really interesting, I think, the different scopes of the different projects and how broad they are. And although maybe the distinctions are somewhat nuanced, we can see that there's clearly different scopes, and we're evaluating very different use cases. Maybe because we have a couple of minutes, I can ask a curveball question. So I know that you guys spend a lot of time thinking and motivating these projects. I also find that most of the time people that work in this space are very intrinsically motivated and very passionate about this work. So could you maybe paint a picture of, if you had more opportunity, if you have more resources, more time, what would you want to participate in? What types of other use cases do you think are on kind of the horizon of retail CBDC that you're looking forward to engaging with? Just ideas that you could put out there, and maybe they could be implemented by the HKMA or the Bank of Israel, or maybe there's other central banks at the BIS that are listening that might take on that opportunity.
Yeah, maybe I can come first. There are so many different CBDC projects happening in different regions. Yoav mentioned about the Icebreaker, and other regions will have other projects. And in Hong Kong, we have the Bridge. I think there are synergies between all of them. Sometimes, although we are experimenting different models, but ultimately, I believe all these models will converge, because if you remember this morning's Eddie's speech, more is more. So you cannot, build different regional platforms. Well, you can, but you cannot get benefits from a bigger system. So I hope that, well, with the drive from BIS Innovation Hub, a lot of these projects can, at certain point, can converge and benefit the different economies.
Great, thank you. You have anything on your mind?
Yeah, I think, the way I see it, so if we go 100 years back, so central bank money was kind of a stupid technology, pieces of paper, pieces of metal. Commercial bank money was also not very advanced. It was written in books, maybe even manually. As years went by, so the money that we're holding in commercial banks has been utilizing technologies that have been advancing and advancing, and it is actually the case that today I can walk into a store in Hong Kong, I can tap my phone, and my bank account in Israel is being debited, okay? However, the central bank money remained in this ancient technology of paper and coins, which means that there are more and more things that we can do with central bank money. So we need to find ways to actually bring central bank money to the public in more advanced technologies, and maybe we can even do this leapfrog and do all of these things that are even more advanced that we can do with commercial bank money today. So for example, we mentioned the DVPs, maybe the micropayments, for example. Think of how cool it could be if we didn't have to buy a monthly subscription to a newspaper, and we could just pay, I don't know, a half of a cent for one news article from one newspaper and a half of a cent for another news article from another newspaper, etc. And then maybe if the central banks actually push this technological frontier and actually bring to the end user, to the retail user, the more advanced technologies of money, it can also be the case that the financial sector will also realize that they need to advance as well and provide the customers with more opportunities than they have today.
Amazing. Okay, wonderful. So, I guess Eddie kind of opened the session by talking about radical innovation. I think you guys got a little taste of maybe where some of the thinking is in the central banking community and people that are driving the project. I always appreciate the opportunity to chat with you wonderful gentlemen. I learn a lot and it's always entertaining. I'm glad that you mentioned Enbridge, because tomorrow there's going to be a panel dedicated to Project Enbridge. So if you're interested in cross-border payments in a wholesale context and maybe one of the most advanced projects in the world, I would definitely recommend tuning in for that. And I think that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you again very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. And see you next FinTech Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Daniel, Aiden, and the panelists. Well, Daniel from the BIS Innovation Hub Center in Hong Kong. That was such an interesting conversation. I want to tell you all that we have a POAP, proof of attendance, NFT, and you can collect it at the pink booth next to the Hong Kong stage. So they are exclusive, limited editions. So make sure you go and grab yours before you leave. We have two very interesting speakers coming up next, but I'm going to leave you with a very, very short break so you can settle down, grab another seat if you want, and then continue sharing the content. I'll see you very soon. Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, we continue with more content. It's getting bigger and better. And we have two great leaders having a discussion today. But before I introduce them, I want to remind you again that we have the Pub app, which is the NFT being given by Finaverse at the pink booth next to the Hong Kong stage. It's the proof of attendance protocol NFT. So make sure before you go and grab it. We have our attendance online worldwide and from the mainland China. Thank you very much for being part also of the event. We've been seeing all this content worldwide, and you would have it on demand at the events app Hong Kong Fintech Week 22 and our hashtag for social media, HKFTW22. Remember, you can also send your questions on Slido. It's at the event app. And participate at the live poll, please. There's more content tomorrow, but the big sessions are coming up. So please stay with us throughout the rest of the day. Our fireside chat. We'll welcome here on the stage once again Christopher Hu. He's the Secretary for the Financial Services and the Treasury, Hong Kong SAR, in conversation with Lawrence Tosi. He's the Managing Partner and founder of WestCap. So please welcome them on stage.
Welcome, LT. Welcome to Hong Kong.
Thank you.
And the reason that we have LT this afternoon with us is that it very much reflects the can-do spirit of Hong Kong. Because to me, you are not just an investor, but an operator with a very well-proven track record, turn around companies, transform the technology, so on and so forth. So in the coming 20 minutes, we have a lot to cover in terms of fintech and also broadly investments and how Hong Kong can serve you and the industry better. Just by means of introduction, WestCap is one of the pioneer and important fintech investor and also operator in the world. And in fact, LT is no stranger to Hong Kong. He has been here a long time, and also at the same time, he has practical experience working in banks and also with startups and Airbnb. So to start with, may I ask a more broad question just to warm up? You have been investing in fintech for quite some time and incredibly successful. If you are asked to name like 3 key trends for fintech investments in the coming decade, what will they be?
First of all, thank you very much, and congratulations on a really remarkable event and a proud day for Hong Kong and all the initiatives you put in place. There are many different ways that I think industries will be transformed by fintech, and some of the most interesting industries is where fintech can be used to bring transformation. And so the areas that we've seen that I think will be most interesting over the next 10 or so years is, first of all, payments. Payments and currencies, the speed, the accessibility, and platforms built in payments, I think will be a very interesting area. And then there's some areas that are just simply being disrupted. For example, if you think about bank technology, 20 years ago, most systems inside of a bank were proprietary. And so they needed to hire engineers and product people inside the banks to build those technologies. And some of the great technologies of the last 20 years came out of banks. Well, with open sourcing and different types of platforms, technology's moved. And so a lot of the innovation that banks rely on today is happening outside their walls. In fact, in some cases, when I started iPrio, which is the leading marketplace for IPOs and structured, it was actually bank software that we had built before we spun it out. It was separate. So I also think, so first I think payments, I think technologies that help enable the banks better serve. And then the last one is the democratization of financial services. There are more and more companies that are finding ways to get financial products in the hand of ordinary consumers. We have investors in a couple of businesses, one called Adipar, one called iCapital. They are essentially breaking down the barriers in the private markets and allowing more retail customers or high net worth customers access those products. So those 3 areas, bank technology, payments, and access to private markets are areas that we think will be really interesting over the coming decade.
thanks for that. I mean, at least it will serve as investment tips for some of the people here, payments, access to private markets and banking, etc. But I'm sure that among many of your fintech investments, some of them are more successful than the others, and some of them may be yielding more, much better results than you originally expect. Can you share with us some of your success stories or potentially, interestingly, failure stories?
Yeah, well, thankfully we haven't had a realized loss before, so I don't know if I have failures, but I think the businesses that surprised me the most over time were the ones where the management teams continued to iterate. So oftentimes you start with an idea when you start a business, you get funding. That funding can confine you to the original idea that you raised money for. But I think being adaptive and thinking about clever ways to add, if I look back at the original business, in any one of the businesses we started, I could say Airbnb or IPO or any of the businesses that we've been part of operating and founding, we started off with one idea, a core idea that had a broad appeal. And you try to focus on businesses and products that's not generally a lot of people like, but maybe a few people really love, and they adopt it, and they become your key carriers going forward of that business. But I would say the biggest distinction in fintech businesses that we've invested in or operated between the ones that are successful and the ones that are enormous impact changing on industries is the ability to expand the mission over time, to add new products, new customers, new regions, and continue to iterate. The hallmark of a great business is not just how you started it, but it's whether you can build a culture that continually innovates and challenges the status quo. And if you do that and you do it well, you'll end up with a business that is much larger than what you even intended to build in the first place.
I'm sure among this audience, there are people who are either in startups, as investors, or working in their own companies, which may not be very techy for the time being, but yet at the same time, they are looking for tips and advice in terms of how they can make themselves technologically more savvy. Are there any advice that you can give them, given all the fintech investments that you have made so far, in terms of how we can internally drive innovation, yet at the same time enhancing overall efficiency of the operation?
It's a great question. So the first thing is, find something you love, right? Oftentimes, I think founders are confined to trying to find something that's convenient or an idea. Find something where you love what you're doing. And that's usually defined by a problem that's, sometimes it's a personal problem. Something that you alone, you think you can solve. So we use this term when we invest. We look for missionaries, not mercenaries. People who are truly committed to what they're trying to achieve is something we look for in a founder. The second piece is always be a learner. Always see what else is being developed. See what else is happening around you. All businesses are built in an ecosystem. What else is happening in the ecosystem? When I was at Airbnb, I would ask the engineers and product people every week to come in and show me another business in the travel space that we admired for its innovations or its change. So be passionate about what you're doing and always be learning about what technology trends are out there. It happens quickly. The best ideas come from places that you might not find obvious. And listen carefully and foster a culture where people inside the business can challenge the status quo, can have ideas. Why do big companies fail to innovate or innovate less as they get bigger? Because they create a culture of predictability that suffocates innovation. The best companies thrive on that innovation, and that innovation comes from learning and challenging and having a culture where you can be open and you can continue to create long after you've established the business itself.
Just now we talked a lot about fintech, about global trends, and back to where we are now, Hong Kong. And you have been traveling around the world looking for investment opportunities, at the same time trying to harness them through technology. From your views or from your angle, how do you see Hong Kong fit into your overall fintech landscape that you have in mind?
So, you know, I've been doing business here in Hong Kong for as long as I can remember from the early days of my career, both at Blackstone, Airbnb, and then IPO. We set up our offices here. Hong Kong's always been a cultural, technological, and social gateway to much of the world. And I think, Mr. Secretary, some of the changes that you're making and the policies you're putting in place will extend that leadership. To be able to attract, all great businesses start with talent. People often ask me, what's the secret to Silicon Valley? I live in San Francisco. What's the secret to Silicon Valley? It starts with the talent. getting the best engineers, the best designers, the best builders. We could not have built Airbnb anywhere else in the United States than San Francisco, I believe, because our access to talent was without. So I think for Hong Kong, thinking about having access to talent, the programs that you're putting in place, and bringing people here, and then empowering them, I actually think some of the ideas, and I'd be interested to ask you, that you're thinking about combining the ecosystem, talent, and capital is really what will drive Hong Kong going forward. I think Hong Kong has an opportunity to seize leadership for fintech development across Asia and the world. I actually think over the last 10 years, in my opinion, I think some of the developments in Chinese companies have led the world. The applications are faster, they're more complicated, social commerce, e-commerce, those trends are here in China. They can be here in Hong Kong as well. And so maybe I'll ask you, Mr. Secretary, a question. What do you think you're doing to kind of maintain that global leadership for Hong Kong as we go through the next decade of financial services and financial technology?
In fact, from my contacts with different stakeholders in this sector, one thing that impressed me most is how we can, through multiple means, enhance the effectiveness and competitiveness of Hong Kong as an ecosystem for fintech. And on that front, first of all, it's definitely policy and regulation. And that's why this morning we made an announcement regarding how we're going to grow this virtual asset ecosystem, including that we are going to allow ETFs on virtual assets, at the same time trying to consult the market to allow retail access to our regulated virtual asset exchanges. That's something that we have done and will continue to do. And another angle, apart from policy and regulation, is regarding the generation of more user case. On the government part, of course, as you have listened to me this morning, we are going to tokenize our green bond issuance. We are also dishing out NFT this time. At the same time, we are contemplating e-Hong Kong dollar and also working with our own country on the CBDC for renminbi. I think all these are the use cases that we generate by the government. But more importantly, we need to have more use cases to be generated by the private sector. Because after all, the best incentive and the best motivation to innovate should lie in the broader private market. And that's why we have a whole series of programs to encourage that. And one thing which stands out is our recent proof of concept subsidy program. The idea is that the government will be a matchmaker. So we'll matchmake a financial institution, which is an established one, like a bank, insurance, so on and so forth, and we'll match that with a fintech company, which is one of the 800 of them that here in Hong Kong. And we'll give them a subsidy in such a way that the innovations being developed by the fintech company can be applied in the financial institution that I just named. And the beauty of this is that with the government role basically just giving out a small subsidy, the financial institution has more incentive to adopt the application because they feel more insecure. And also they feel that it got endorsement by the government. But yet at the same time, the fintech companies find this very welcoming because it allows them to really find a client which may potentially adopt their applications and also commercialize them going forward. The successful rate in terms of commercialization for these projects are really high. Based on our last experience, it's over 70%. That's why in the coming phase 2 of the project, we will strive for higher commercialization and also work with Cyberport, which is our agent, to make it a success. And there's a story that I always quoted, which is interesting. It's about how our fintech companies has been trying to adopt these use cases as much as possible. And one thing that has come to my mind is a fintech company which offer a AI analysis for the creditworthiness of companies, such that the banks in general can better assess the creditworthiness of enterprises and make better credit decisions. And that company come to me and say, originally their market is all in Hong Kong. So they charge a certain price for that product, for their services, but it's always their aspiration to go cross-boundary to the mainland. And that's why they are looking for clients over there. And one time they came across a client, which is a bank in the mainland, and they are happy to take on their services. And of course, they asked how much they should pay. And knowing the Greater Bay Area is 10 times the population of Hong Kong, the fintech company charged them like 10 times of the usual price. And eventually the bank in China is saying it's so cheap because they never have an idea of such an effective innovation being charged at such a low price. I think the moral of this story is that, first of all, the fintech applications being developed in Hong Kong has a wide application, not just in Hong Kong, but also across the mainland. That's number one. And number two, I would say that it's the government's role, among others, to bring our fintech companies cross-boundary to China and also cross-boundary to the rest of Asia. Because after all, the government being the government, we command credibility, yet at the same time, we have wider access, which allow our fintech companies to reach a broader market. And that's exactly what we, the government, and Invest Hong Kong are doing, trying to have a whole series of acceleration programs, helping our fintech companies not just to grow in Hong Kong, but cross-boundary in Asia and also cross-border in China.
It's remarkable. In just what you went through, Mr. Secretary, there's like 4 different innovations of what Hong Kong's doing as far as hooking up founders along with companies, solving real applications, supporting the ecosystem. Nowhere else in the world is that happening. So congratulations, just innovation. And I think for investors like us or founders like the folks in the room, this creates an environment that you know you can succeed because you're creating effectively a tailwind that'll help push people towards that success. Remarkable.
Yeah, and just in response to your point about talent, apart from bringing in talent from abroad, that's what we have been trying to do in terms of putting fintech as one of the key areas in our talent list, and also have a whole series of measures that just announced by the Chief Executive to welcome talents from different parts of the world. We should also focus on really to groom our local talent. Because after all, for the local talent, there are 2 batches that we are after. One batch are those in the industry. They are looking for ways to upskill themselves. And the other are those yet to be industry, yet they need subsidy or they need support to retool themselves. So these are the areas exactly that we are after. Try to retool people who are yet to be here in fintech, try to bring them on board. At the same time, for people who are already in this industry, to get them have an enhanced learning capability and a broad exposure in such a way that they can upskill themselves for the future challenges.
That's an important part of it, to be able to create this kind of a network of education and advancement for a wider set. You know, one of the things that the Valley's always struggled with is that talent is tough. And so when the markets are very good, hiring people and scaling your talent base is really difficult.
Yeah.
And so being able to, and there's no government intervention in what's being built in the Valley, and so being able to create that, I think, creates not only opportunity, but also will be very attractive.
Yeah. But now you're in Hong Kong and you have seen for yourself what our fintech landscape is like. Once you go back to the US or when you see your investors, when you're asked about Hong Kong as a fintech hub or as a fintech market, how will you describe us?
Well, I think first of all, you've already done it. Look who's here. I think it's an amazing event. I don't think anywhere else in the world, I think that there's been such cooperation between the public and the private sector on developing a fintech hub and an ecosystem. And that I think is very revolutionary, to be honest, and very innovative. And the way I would describe it is, you know, almost all the businesses that we invest in, all the businesses we invest in are global businesses, and they look for where to build their hubs, both from a product perspective as well as an innovation perspective. And I think the possibilities in Hong Kong are very interesting. Over the last couple of days, I've had a chance to meet with entrepreneurs and founders. It's just very interesting to hear there's an energy, there's a momentum to what's happening, and I think that's really interesting. Frankly, at a time in the world where a lot of our largest companies are being challenged by governments who are somewhat kind of afraid of the size and success. And so I think being welcoming, giving people an environment. And as far as the startup environment goes right now, I know that we're going through a difficult economic time globally. It's the best time to start a company is exactly when things are difficult. Some of the best businesses I've started during times of economic stress because, frankly, there's less competition and people are seeking innovation because often innovation means efficiency or moving an industry forward. And so it's actually an incredibly interesting time now that there's market turmoil to be able to start and develop businesses.
Yeah. And going back to the talent point, which you mentioned at the outset, apart from grooming our local talent and also bringing into Hong Kong established talent from abroad, I think one thing we have also provided for is that, in fact, many of our local universities in Hong Kong, they have campuses in the mainland. And there's a huge pool of young people who are potentially very techy and very knowledgeable in this area. So we will also extend our net beyond and not cover them in a sense that for those who are studying in the campuses run by Hong Kong local universities in the mainland, in the GBA in particular, they will be included in the potential talent list that we will be covered in such a way that they can be a strong force to grow our ecosystem together?
I think it's important. I think it's important to show young entrepreneurs that they can do it. They can actually come up with an idea and you can build something amazing. And that creates kind of a reinforcing vision. I think when I started my first company, iPrio, which is ultimately we sold for a couple $2 billion, a global leader, I didn't even know what a startup was. I just had an idea and I thought I could disrupt something and built it. And so showing that example to folks so they can go out and see that there's the ability to learn from each other and excel is incredible. It is the beginning of the seeds of the future companies that will be great.
Yeah. I must say, today at the FinTech Week, we have more than 12,000 people, and they are of different backgrounds. Some of them are looking for money as startups, I suppose, and some others, they are people from financial institutions. And for the former, I'm sure that they are looking for tips from you in terms of what you're looking for from the next startup, in such a way that they can potentially get money from your fund. Any advice to them?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is find a real problem that needs to be solved and find an interesting way to solve it. And so I feel like, I mentioned this before, I feel like the best founders are people who had a passion for the problem they were trying to solve, and they pushed forward to it. Be open to change. Be open to change in your idea. You won't get it completely right, and some of the best companies started as one thing and ended up as another. And my advice is that focus on that. Be open about what you know and what you don't know. And the last piece is something I tell all founders when I meet them. When you undertake the journey of building something that's special to you, something you feel you're uniquely qualified to build, find investors who have built something before. Find an investor who's actually coded or actually created something, because your journey won't be exactly what you expect it to be. It'll be full of good days and bad days and surprises and pivots and changes. But find people who have actually done it before. I've been fortunate enough to start 4 businesses, and I've had investors on my board. While they may have been good investors, the best investors are the ones who could give me real advice, who had actually been there before. Maybe that meant suffering through difficult times. Maybe it meant that they were able to innovate and change things over time. But find investors who can agree with your vision, push you hard, and make you think and adapt and learn and get better every day. And that is where the magic for the best companies come from.
If I have a final question, if you don't mind, it's for the second group, who are working for the traditional financial service sector, and they are looking for ways to embrace fintech. Any advice to them?
Yeah, I think when I was running larger businesses, I would always spend time looking at what was outside our walls and really making sure that I could see what was out there. And so, when I was at Blackstone, I spent a lot of time running technology in addition to being obviously an investor in that business. And I spent a lot of time just meeting with startups who were building technology that might have been relevant to Blackstone. And I would see certain ideas. Now, some of those technologies we actually ended up funding and embracing, and they became huge companies like Carbon Black, or I started iLevel when I was at Blackstone because I realized no one in the industry had ever created a platform for aggregating portfolio company information. That's $1 billion business now. It was just simply an idea that I had that I built at night and on weekends when I was at Blackstone. So I would say for people in traditional businesses, look outside your 4 walls, be conversant in the technologies around you, find what people are doing, and think about ways they could apply to what you're doing. No one company can out-innovate an entire industry. The way you embrace the industry and see what other innovations are out there, sometimes you build, sometimes you buy, sometimes you partner. And think about it that way and use that to drive your company forward. And if you do, you'll come across things that can help you build your business. You'll find companies that you can be a client and you can inspire them to become great businesses. I mean, there's several billion-dollar businesses that just started as clients of Blackstone. We funded them and then built them.
I think time is up, but I'm sure that we got a lot to learn from you next time when you come back. Thank you so much.
I look forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you to learn.